Hi everyone, I'm Frank Tiano, the Superintendent of Schools right here in Uxbridge, and welcome to a special episode of Behind the Black and Orange. Today we will forego our usual format and do what most New Englanders like to do, talk about the weather. And who better than to have in studio than Channel 5 meteorologist AJ Burnett. Also with us in studio are two of our proud Spartan alumni, Silbor and Zack Mages. It's going to be a great show. Stick around, we'll be right back. Welcome back. Today we have a very special roundtable discussion where we're going to talk about climate change and education. We are thrilled to have with us Mr. AJ Burnett. He is a meteorologist from WCVB TV, Channel 5, right here in Boston, as well as we have our austere alum from Uxbridge High School. We have Silbor.
How you doing?
And we have Zack Mages.
How are you?
Gentlemen, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us here.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
AJ, you are a local. You come from Barnstable, down the Cape.
Yeah, I'm a Cape Codder, Barnstable High School, Red Raiders. Proud to be from Cape Cod, proud to be a local boy working here in Boston.
And you went off to study over at Rutgers.
I did, yeah, down in New Jersey, State University of New Jersey. It was a 4-year program, and I made it out alive.
That's okay. That's kind of the floor, but I'm sure you got a degree and you move forward.
Yes, I did.
So you've been an on-air meteorologist for over a decade. And
yeah, almost two.
Almost two.
Yeah, almost 2 decades.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so in different channels here in Boston. So you're familiar to our audience, obviously, and you've been very active in the community in terms of working with different foundations and so forth. And you've worked with the Alzheimer's Association, you've worked with the Perkins School of the Blind, and also two birthday wishes. And can you tell us a little bit about that organization? And I know they have an event coming up, I believe, on May 19th.
They do, and I'll kind of plug all three. We'll start with birthday wishes. They have their big annual fundraiser, the biggest fundraiser of the year, being held May 19th. And it's called the Cakewalk. And basically a little bit about the organization is they provide birthday parties for kids that are experiencing homelessness. So they may not have the ability, through their parent or guardian or whatever their situation is, to be able to celebrate their birthday. And really, I mean, if there's one day to celebrate yourself, it's your birthday. If there's one day that you should feel special, it's your birthday. And so I'm really proud to be working with them and helping them provide, birthday parties like every kid should have.
Absolutely.
To celebrate, another year on the planet. Perkins School for the Blind is another great group. I worked with them recording books onto audio format so that the visually impaired could enjoy the book as well. You said mute the phone,
yeah,
but you didn't say mute the watch.
Well, this is your first time on TV, so we get
it. It is. You think
that.
I get the hang
okay.
of it after a while.
Sure.
So that was the Perkins School for the Blind, and also the Alzheimer's Association is a group that I worked with for a number of years, almost 10 years actually. Served on the board of directors for just about 6 years.
Wow.
And I got involved with them to kind of pay homage to both of my grandmothers who suffered with the disease. Lost both of my grandmothers to it, and I've seen firsthand how difficult that disease can be, not only for the person afflicted with it, but more so the family and the loved ones who have to see that person go through it.
Right.
It's a tough disease, and I was really proud of my work with them.
Well, thank you for giving back to our community.
Of course.
Greatly appreciate it.
Of course.
Brandon, you're Uxbridge High graduate, 2015.
Yes.
You're at UMass Lowell.
I am.
And you interned with this gentleman to your right.
I did.
How did that work out for you?
It was a wonderful experience. I loved every single minute of it. First day I went in, I didn't know what to expect. I was nervous. What are they going to be like? But then I got there and I was greeted by Cindy Fitzgibbons. Just smile. She was just smiling the entire time. She was very conversational. and really just everyone there, everyone, this guy, the entire weather team, everyone behind the scenes, even the janitors were just unbelievably kind, and it was an absolute privilege to work with every single one of them.
That's great to hear, and we're going to hear a little bit more about that experience when we talk about your internships. And Zack Mages, you said it sounds like Pages.
It does.
Zack Mages, in your class of 16.
Yep.
Here at Uxbridge High School, and you're at Rutgers.
I am.
And that's AJ's alma mater.
Yeah, same four-year program, and he made me feel really good when he said he barely made it out. So
he said that off air, but that's okay.
I think I said I made it out alive, not barely.
Oh, okay. All right. Oh, okay. That's a little bit different. He made it out alive. You have a year to go?
I do. Yep.
Nice. Good luck with that.
Thank you.
And good luck to you as well.
Thank you very much.
So we have a series of questions, and again, thanks so much for being here. The most important question that I have it's for AJ only, but if you guys know the answer to this, is it going to snow again? And are we going to have another snow day? Everybody in Uxbridge wants to know.
Well, I can guarantee you, yes.
It will snow again.
It will snow again.
Okay. How about the snow day?
Oh, you wanted to know about this year?
Yeah. Like.
Oh, okay. See, I thought
I'm sorry.
about, every
School
year.
we thinking chunks here.
That's a little more difficult for me to answer.
Okay.
There have been March, as you know, is one of those months where it can go either way. You could have your really great spring days, or you could have your really difficult, snowy, rainy, disgusting sort of days. Where it's just hard to get around. And for that matter, April can offer up kind of the
First
same
week
story.
or two, yeah.
Yeah.
We've had snow days.
So it's I won't say it's in the cards from what I've seen at this point, but there's always a non-zero chance, let's just say, heading through this time of year.
Okay. So kids, AJ Burnett just about guaranteed we will not have a snow day. Okay, we'll write it down here. So, thank you.
For what it's worth.
For what it's worth. So you guys are all connected in some way. We have 2 Uxbridge grads, we have 2 Rutgers almost grad, and you interned with AJ.
Yes.
So you're, why meteorology? Why UMass Lowell? Why Rutgers? How did you know that this is what you wanted to do? And I'll let you discuss, because I'm curious.
Well, funny enough, my fascination with weather actually began as outright terror, because when I was really, really little, I was horrified of thunderstorms. And I think just slowly that terror just kind of gradually became fascination. It was almost exhilarating when you saw, the radar with, the bright reds and yellows, and, it's just barreling towards you, and you see the dark clouds off in the distance. I always, that was my association with thunderstorms. I would see the smallest of dark clouds, and I would say, oh, is it going to be a thunderstorm? But obviously that wasn't the case. But yeah, it turned into an exhilaration, and I loved it from then on. And I would watch TV shows about storm chasing and things like that, and I always thought, how cool would it be to do that? Now you can't make a career out of that, but I think that would be something that I would love to do one day, and here I am at UMass Lowell studying it.
I love it. I love to hear students use the word exhilarating when they're talking about their vocation and their passion.
Yeah.
Brandon, how about you?
Very similar. A lot of childhood appreciation of it, but the big event for me was I was up vacationing in New Hampshire in the Lakes region, and there was a tornado up there. And when I was vacationing, and we lost power for a week, and you don't really usually hear about tornadoes up in New Hampshire, and that was just something that really piqued my interest, and I was like, I want to know why that could happen. Because normally you hear about it out in Kansas and Oklahoma and stuff like that, so that was definitely the big moment for me.
Wow. And AJ, how about you?
For me, it's a very different story, I think, from most meteorologists. As you just heard, thunderstorms or big storms are kind of the commonality if you ask most meteorologists why they get into it. For me, it was a perfectly sunny day down on Cape Cod. I was knee-high to a grasshopper at the time, about maybe 3 years old. And I'll throw out a name that maybe you remember. You two will have no idea. Don Kent.
I love Don Kent. With the chalkboards?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So Don Kent was on the air one day when I happened to be watching, and he drew a big blue H right over Cape Cod, which of course means high pressure and a sunny day. But to a 3-year-old, I ran outside looking up in the sky for a big blue H to go over my house. And was just kind of fascinated with weather and data gathering. And I remember for my 13th birthday for my bar mitzvah, I got a rain gauge. Wow. And it was a Heath kit, so I shared that experience of putting that together with my dad on our dining room table, much to the chagrin of my mom, I'm sure. Soldering all the pieces together and then putting that out on the roof and collecting rain data at our house down the Cape. And, it's been that way since the age of 3, with a very short period where I wanted to be a physical therapist, I thought, in high school, but quickly changed back. And happy to say I've been doing it mostly ever since. There was a brief break in there, but
Nice.
Mostly ever since I've been doing it.
It's funny, you bring up physical therapy. Math and science is obviously important, to what you folks do. And when we talk about meteorology, I mean, when I was a kid, Don Kent, he was the weatherman. Mm-hmm. But there is a science to it. Could you just explain for us, any one of you, exactly what is meteorology?
Well, I think it's
You're studying.
It's not a quiz.
It's just
Go ahead.
Yeah, really it kind of boils down to the mathematical relationships that kind of create the natural world around us. So clouds and things like convection, which is sort of the fuel that drives thunderstorms and things of that nature. But yeah, I think it's just the natural order of our atmosphere, and the different science and mathematical relationships that kind of intertwine to kind of build up what our atmosphere is doing. It's the best I think I can put it.
It sounds good, but I wouldn't know either way. So, Zach, do you concur?
I agree. It's just a way of looking at our world in a mathematical physics sense. I can definitely say that it's mostly a math, physics, science. So
Okay. How'd they do?
Pretty well, I'd say. Pretty well. I would coin it as kind of the study of the overall movement and behavior of our atmosphere, of our oceans, and the components that make up our atmosphere. And we study this through use of physics, chemistry, a lot of mathematics within both of those disciplines. Mm-hmm. So we use those to kind of model the behavior of the atmosphere. And meteorology has lots of different smaller disciplines in it. There's your forecasting, there's your climatology, there's your air pollution meteorology. I mean, there are so many different ways that you can use, meteorology as a whole to, work with or better understand the behavior of different parts of the atmosphere.
That's great. And so obviously education's important, and I know, AJ, you value that. Mm-hmm. In terms of the work that you do. You often visit elementary schools, middle schools. Mm-hmm. You even, you're a licensed teacher, and you dabbled in the finer arts of teaching.
Dabbled is a good word.
Yes. Math and science. And so obviously it is important. For us K-12 educators, in a perfect world, what would you like us to be teaching our students? Obviously, we're doing a great job here in Uxbridge, but in terms of for meteorology and as it relates to the future of our planet.
Well, just kind of an overall understanding of the differences. I think especially now, and getting into the topics that we'll get into shortly, is the differences between weather and climate. That's a big hot button topic that, again, we're going to be talking about shortly, but the differences between the two, being able to recognize patterns. Pattern recognition in forecasting is probably one of the most useful tools to have. If one wants to be, go on into meteorology.
Sure.
There are so many facets of meteorology now that are computer driven. So computer science, and you're taking computer science as well, I understand, is another useful tool. Coding to solve problems, you know, the hour of code you keep hearing about. You know, I myself, you know, computers were obviously big when I was in college, and I was in college a long time before you guys were probably even born, I would guess. But you know, I'll just give you an example. I got, I think, my first email account my sophomore year of college, so I didn't have email before that. Yeah, just blowing your minds, right? So, you know, computers were just starting to really kind of explode at that point, and you know, we didn't have, nobody had a mobile phone. I know that's hard for you to kind of grasp too, but you know, computers have become such a mainstay in our everyday world. Why not try and figure out, you know, how those work and help problem solve with those platforms too? So those are the things I'd like to see more of in high school, and I'm happy to say that a lot of schools are already doing that and doing it very well.
Sure, and even bring it down to the lower grades so that they're prepared for high school
Absolutely.
in the future. No, I appreciate that. And talking about you know, different positions under that large umbrella, you know, typically the government is the largest employer of meteorologists, from, you know, NASA, the military, private industry, universities. But we see the end product of your work every day. You know, we see you on television, and I'm guessing there's a lot more to it. And I was just hoping that you could share with us a little bit about what your day is like, and how much education and training did you have to be in front of the camera?
Okay, so I would say that the first question I hear most meteorologists get, you know, in conversation, hey, what is it that you do for a living? I'm a meteorologist. Oh, what TV station do you work for?
Exactly.
When in actuality, a very small percentage of people in meteorology work in TV.
Right.
You know, I'd say probably less than 5 or 3%, probably even lower. But as you mentioned, you know, you see the end result of my, you know, work in trying to get the forecast together graphically, and you're seeing what I'm doing. The government, National Weather Service. Let's start with the Severe Storms Forecast Center. They're the ones that are putting out the watches and warnings for severe thunderstorms and tornado watches. So that comes from the government. There's a group in Norman, I believe, Norman, Oklahoma. Is that where they are now? That puts out those watches for the whole country. You know, they narrow it down to an area that, you know, they're concerned with. And then the local forecast offices, and we have one here in Massachusetts that serves most of the state, most of the Commonwealth, pardon me, except for Berkshire County, and that's based out of Norton, Massachusetts. And they will issue the warnings. So I saw this on Twitter yesterday. I'm going to copy the idea because I loved it. There's the cupcake watch and a cupcake warning. Right? Nobody knows the difference between, well, very few people know the difference between a watch and a warning. A cupcake watch is you see on the countertop, you've got your flour, you've got your oil, you've got your eggs, you know, and that's, the ingredients are there. That's a watch. A cupcake warning, there's the cupcake with the candle on it. It's ready to be eaten. That's a warning, right? So same thing with a severe thunderstorm watch. The ingredients are there for storms to develop that could produce large hail, damaging wind. A warning is issued, again, by government people when there's a cupcake on the table, when there is a severe thunderstorm or there's one just about to form that is likely to cause damage.
It's present.
It's present, it's imminent, exactly. And so the government, as you mentioned, you know, that's where a lot of meteorologists work. It's not just the operational forecasters, though. There are people who are creating models, who are trying to make the models better. The models are, you know, not the people we see on the cover of magazines. The models to us are the simulations of what the atmosphere will look like in the future. And we heavily rely on those, but we also heavily rely on our experience. You know, the models might not be able to forecast little subtleties in our local area, and that's where it's important to have you know, someone with experience who's looking at these models and saying, okay, I'm using them as a tool in my tool belt to help me forecast.
That's so. That's
That was a
fascinating.
very long-winded answer to your question, I think.
You should go back into teaching. I mean, because I understood that. Thank you.
Oh, well, great.
But the on-air piece. So now you understand your science,
Mm-hmm.
and now you have to convey that to folks on TV. Is there a specific training for that? Did you receive that in college?
So again, you go back to the day that it was sunny, and that's when I wanted to become a meteorologist. I did this differently too. A lot of schools either offer more research-based meteorology. Those are the people that go into building our forecast models, building tools to help in the forecast. You also have schools that may have a broadcast component to it. Some of those would include, I don't think UMass Lowell has too much in the broadcasting.
Not as much as, say, like Lyndon State or
Right.
Penn State. Certainly Penn State
Yeah.
is well known for their TV broadcast.
Penn State, Lyndon State, Plymouth State, I think, does have some resources there
Yeah,
too.
a little bit, yeah.
But they actually will put out a television product, much like we're doing here.
Nice.
And that's where you can get your experience. You also get your experience through internships. When you're interning at a TV station, one of the things that most TV stations will allow you to do is put the microphone on, get the suit on, stand in front of the chroma key, and go through the show and actually make a presentation, and we'll send you home with a recording. It's like your souvenir for
Yeah.
the internship. For me, I went to Rutgers. At the time, they did not do television.
Okay.
They did very limited radio. And so for me, wanting to get into broadcast meteorology was a little different because they didn't have those resources. I just somehow got very lucky. I ended up doing 2 years of radio out of college. I forecasted for about 30 to 50 different radio stations across the country from Lexington, Mass. For a company that no longer exists, but still friendly with my old managers and some of my old colleagues there. And I did radio for a couple of years.
Nice.
And you can't have the accent when you're forecasting for Altoona, Pennsylvania, or for San Francisco or Napa, California. You can't.
That's an acquired
Hotly
skill.
cloudy skies this afternoon. You can't do that. So that forced me. I never really had a strong accent, luckily. So I was, kind of. I say gifted. I don't mean to frown upon those that do have the accent, but it helped me get to where I wanted to go.
Right.
And the rest is just kind of history. It was right place, right time. I started in Boston. Most of the time, if you're a broadcasting person, you start out in a much smaller market and work your way up to Boston if that's where you want to go. Mm-hmm. I was lucky enough to get my start here and stay here for the most part, and very, very thankful for that, very appreciative
Nice.
for that.
Well, I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
Now, Brendan and Zach, you sat down at the kitchen table with your parents, and you want to go to college, and you've chosen this major. And the natural question for your parents would be, what do you want to do with this degree, son? And why these colleges? Could both of you share with us a little bit about your experiences?
Yeah, well, I wanted to do, I guess, like I said before, storm chasing was something that I really wanted to get into, but again, you can't really make a career out of that unless you get like maybe a private company or a university to lend you a grant so that you can go out during, a tornado season and chase tornadoes and research data, gather data and just do a whole bunch of other research. So I would like to go into a more, I guess, behind the scenes job, maybe like National Weather Service, where you just kind of monitor, radar. I don't know exactly what they do, but you monitor things, you make sure you communicate the current weather to the masses and make sure they understand what's going on. So I think, but in relation to your question about UMass Lowell, really it wasn't the program itself. It was more of the university. It was the location. It was the atmosphere, and I just liked I liked the urban feeling because I've lived in Uxbridge, which is kind of a cross between a suburb and kind of a rural town. So I kind of liked the busy, bustling sounds of Lowell. You know, it's not a huge city, but it's still much more crowded than Uxbridge is, and I enjoyed that feeling. It's funny, UMass Lowell was actually I applied to 3 schools, and UMass Lowell was actually my last choice. Linden State, up in New Hampshire, I believe. Vermont. It is. Yeah, it's Vermont. They were my first choice because they're well known for TV and for broadcast. But I wasn't a fan of the campus. It was much more isolated than Uxbridge was. It was a lot smaller. So I thought, maybe this isn't my first choice. So I went to Plymouth State. That was my second choice school. And I said, yeah, this is really nice. It's still kind of a relatively small town, but it's situated on a hill. You know, it has nice foliage during the fall. Sure. That was a major plus, and I liked the campus. But then when I came to Lowell, there was just something that just felt right, I guess. It was, and I do think that it was the urban feel of the campus that I really enjoyed.
And it's a beautiful campus, all brand new buildings. It's about fit no matter what your major is, and you have to feel comfortable there. And you're a sophomore, correct?
I'm a senior. I'll be graduating in May.
You're a senior.
I'm a senior, so.
I crossed it. And Zach, how did you choose Rutgers, and what are you looking to do with your degree?
Well, very similar to Brandon, I actually applied to all of the same schools that he did. But I found there's just something different about Rutgers. I don't know how big it was when AJ went, but it's about 50,000 kids there right now.
Wow.
And I don't know, like, coming from a small town, you think going to a big school like that would be a big culture shock, but I didn't mind it that much. It's a big sports environment. But I went to a meteorology accepted students day and sat down with a couple of the professors and just pretty much felt at home almost immediately. I liked all of them. I started bonding with some of them almost immediately. And Rutgers has a bit more of a research-based program, which I was very interested in. So that was definitely the big draw for me. And then as I've spent time there over the last 2.5 years, I've definitely become more interested in the research side of things, not so much the broadcast. Currently working on a research project right now that's kind of opened my eyes to some of the things I could do. But I'm looking to go into graduate school and work maybe in the private industry or something along those lines.
Excellent.
If I could actually elaborate a little bit more. This is kind of after the fact, after I actually got into Lowell and decided, I wanted to go here. But I really did think that my choice was a good choice because my program is actually much smaller. It's not a huge percentage of the students that attend the school. So, I think last year there were maybe like 5 seniors that graduated from my specific major. So because of that, our professors are very, very personable. We know their names, they know ours. Some of our professors prefer that we call them by their first names, which is a great environment. It's a very friendly environment.
It's a nice learning community.
Right, exactly. We all get
Within
along.
a big system.
Yes, we all get along super well. We kind of like to think of it as one big family, and it's a great atmosphere.
That's great.
I feel the same way.
And when you were looking at schools, you've both taken advantage of opportunities for internships. And did that attract you to the college, number one? And number two, can you just tell us a little bit about that work-based experience?
Well, Rutgers I saw as a kind of a hub between Philadelphia and New York City, some big areas in New Jersey as well. So I knew that there were a lot of opportunities there. And as I've spent time there, I found that there were actually opportunities directly on campus. So I've been interning at the New Jersey State Climatologist office for the last 3 months now.
Nice.
So yeah, going to a big school and having a lot of faculty who know a lot of people, there's always chances to make connections. So big school like that, you can find anything fast.
That's a great opportunity. And I know UMass Lowell is one of the top schools in Massachusetts for internships. And you obviously scored the key one. But can you tell us how that has helped you in terms of choosing the direction you're going to go, or a little bit about that?
I would say that in terms of Lowell's location, I didn't choose Lowell because of its location specifically. I just wanted to choose, you know, the campus and the program that felt right, and you know, Lowell was a nice kind of I wouldn't say a compromise, but you know, it was just a nice midway between both. So, but then, you know, when I did join and I started learning about all the opportunities, I realized, you know, I'm actually really close to all these different news stations, like. You know, like Channel 5, you know, I spent, you know, middle school and high school, you know, I spent my mornings watching the news, you know, and it was part of my morning routine, and, you know, I realized, you know, I could really, you know, I could start to get into these places. I could start, you know, starting to meet these meteorologists and these, you know, so it was definitely a plus, but in terms of where you, what my internship has kind of decided where I want to go. I enjoyed the internship immensely, but I don't think broadcast is quite the route I want to take. I think emergency management or something along those lines would be much more beneficial, because I don't know, I just don't enjoy, you know, being in front of a camera or anything like that.
And that's,
You're doing a pretty good job.
But yeah, but I do think I'm doing a decent job right now. Which
is, I think, one of the
strange.
key things about internships is that when you do an internship, you're there to kind of learn about one discipline, and it's okay if, like in your example, you gave, you know, TV kind of a chance, a peek, and you realize that it just wasn't your thing. Well, then we've done our job. You know, we're not there to convince you.
Right.
To do it,
Yeah.
we're there to show you what we do, and if you've decided that, you know, you wanted to go in a different direction, well then great, we've at least given you, and this is true for any internship, they've given you, you know, kind of that information that you need to help guide you, and in this case it just was guiding you away from us. No, I mean, you know, you were a fantastic intern.
Thank you.
You brought a lot to the team. And you know, you've developed relationships with us, and so that down the road, when it comes time for you to go look for, you know, emergency management positions, you can call on us now, and we're your resources. You know, we were very impressed with you, and that's really the key to internships is making the connections, making the contacts, and letting it guide you in a direction. Doesn't need to be into that direction. It just needs to be into a direction. And I think you know, that helped you.
Yeah. And I thank you for that.
You don't have to thank me.
And that's an excellent point. And that's what we're doing in the public schools as well, is having our high school students engage in those internships. And we're trying to bring that down even in terms of shadowing down to the middle schools. Excellent point. AJ, you talked a little bit earlier about the difference between the weather and climate. And the weather changes. This is New England changes. It probably just changed 5 times while we were in here.
Probably.
But I've seen you on social media. I've read quotes by you and articles and so forth with regard to your concern about climate change. What are you concerned about?
I'm concerned about a lot of things. I'm concerned that people are formulating opinions about climate change, not knowing the difference between weather and climate. Climate can affect the weather, weather can affect the climate, but they're two very different disciplines. With weather, what we're looking at is kind of the instantaneous, what is it doing outside right now, and what might it be doing the next few days. Climate is looking at not only one spot, like Boston or Uxbridge, and saying let's go back 4 years and find the average temperature. But this is taking data like weather over the course of many, many years for broad areas of the globe, and in some cases the entire globe, and looking at that over the span of time, you know, before we started keeping records, like written records. The high today was 43, the low was 27. Going back and taking samples of soil, of ice, and seeing what sorts of clues might be available in those areas to help us kind of figure out where we might be going. The argument that a lot of people use, first of all, you can argue either side of climate change. It's all in how you want to massage the numbers. You're taking statistics now. You know that statistics is a gelatinous thing. It can move. It can change. It depends on what numbers you use, and it's all data. We just may be using different data sets, right? What I'm nervous about is that people say, well, the climate's always been changing. It has. We know this. We know that there have been times where it's been warmer and then colder. Ice ages, they happened.
Sure.
There were periods in between ice ages where it had to have warmed up to separate those ice ages. So we know that there is some sort of cyclical thing going on here. I think climate change is best viewed as the rate of change of those natural changes. And also we can sense it on a local scale. What is it doing to us in our backyards? So this is where the two start getting a little intertwined.
Sure.
But I would raise the examples here in Uxbridge. How many tornadoes did we have last year? Was that normal? How many flooding situations did we have? Was that normal? Okay, that's arguing 1 year. That's a very small piece that you could almost say, well, that was a weird year.
Yeah.
That was an outlier, exactly. But let's look at back when we were kids. Are the winters the same? Has the time of winter seemed to have gotten later, perhaps? We used to get snowstorms in December through February, maybe early March. Does that seem like it's later now? Are we starting winter in January and finishing in April? When I was teaching, I had a classroom on the southwestern side of the building in September with a bunch of young kids. Got a little funky in there when we were 90 degrees for several days into September.
Yes.
And what we need to do is start saying, okay, these may be the signs of some changes that are going on. It's just, is this part of the normal cycle? Or is this part of, your troughs and your peaks, so your cold periods and your warm periods, are they starting to kind of shift upward a little bit? And there's data to support any view you want. It's become a political hotbed issue,
Sure it has.
which is very unfortunate. But I think if you look at the rate of change and the numbers of record warm global temperatures, when you take all the data and you average out every single station, not just here in the Northeast, not just in North America, but the entire world, and you average that up and you see that, to get the average, it's the middle of all your peaks and valleys, right? Mm-hmm. When you start adding on a bunch of months to the tops of your list repeatedly, year after year, that's a sign that something's going on here.
And do you think that's the cause of that? Is it natural, or has we as humans, have we sped up that rate of change, in your opinion?
So I think part of it is cyclical, for sure. In my eyes, for sure. I don't want to say for sure,
No.
because there's somebody out there who's going to disagree with me.
Absolutely.
And I respect everybody's opinion on that. But I also think that we've contributed to that rate of change. You're going to go back to Al Gore's hockey stick graph, right out of nowhere. It's unbelievable. Like, how can you believe a chart like that? Oh, we've been great, and then all of a sudden, we're going to go this way. That's not, we can't wrap our brains around that. But again, if we can start to see that the rate of change is increasing and of warmer months, I think that's kind of the key, and I think that we've had something to do with it. To the people who don't share that view, I would just suggest one thing. There are lots of positive changes that we can make that aren't going to hurt necessarily down the road. For example, we can buy LED lights. Get the same light, uses a lot less energy. We can recycle. You know, what is it to take a plastic box or a soda can and throw it in a different container? People are going to say, well, that raises our taxes now because there's more labor involved and you need to get 2 trucks down instead of, or maybe 3 trucks to come down your street instead of 1. But these are all little changes that we don't have to change the way we live to an extent that it feels unnatural. There are little things that if all of us did tiny things to kind of help,
Yeah.
what's the downside to that? What is the downside to it? I can't think of one. So why not just try, you know? And that's kind of how I feel about it.
That makes sense to me. Gentlemen, in your classes, is this a topic of discussion?
Yeah, almost daily, I would say.
Yep, it is. It's important because it affects our everyday life in ways that sometimes we don't think about. And I think that's the important thing, is letting people know how it's going, what they can do in their daily lives to change it, because it just seems like such a big issue and something that's out of their control.
Mm-hmm.
So making it very small scale and how it'll affect their day-to-day life is very important.
Heard the same thing?
Yeah. I mean, and to kind of add to AJ's point of view, you can't ignore the fact that CO2 has been, emissions have gone up, and we've taken data that show that our levels of CO2 in the atmosphere have increased.
Mm-hmm.
And they've increased rather dramatically. They haven't increased exponentially, but it's been a steady increase. And the science is there. CO2 it traps heat. CO2 traps heat and the heat and the radiation that comes from the sun. And to think that that won't affect things here on Earth is kind of mind-boggling to think about, because it's such a big change. Mm-hmm. That you would think that it would have some effect. So
CO2 is a normal part of our atmosphere.
Sure.
It's necessary for our atmosphere to function in the way we need it to. There's no doubt that that's the case. I mean, it makes up most of the gas in our atmosphere. But the saying, too much of a good thing isn't necessarily a good thing. Like you were saying, CO2 it traps heat. Well, that's a good thing, because otherwise our planet would freeze. All right, but too much of that, it's like we may choose to sleep under a sheet and a blanket at night. Just covers. They're necessary for us to feel comfortable. But if I throw another comforter or 2 on you, you're going to get uncomfortable, because we're trapping more heat. You like blankets, but just not that many, right?
Right.
So CO2 is kind of the same sort of thing. And it's no surprise that a lot of that CO2 is coming from, our different industrial plants. There's smog in our atmosphere now that, wasn't there before. I mean, you need to have fine particles in the atmosphere too, right, for our atmosphere to function. But again, too many of them, and now we're starting to introduce, some problems. So, I just want to address that. People might say, well, CO2 is a natural thing. It absolutely is, but too much of it is not natural.
I'm so glad you guys are in school for this. I'm so glad, AJ, that you do what you do in terms of having folks who are working on these problems, or at least understanding them and being able to explain them like you did here today for our audience. Last question for you, AJ. Mm-hmm. You've been in this market. You have covered a lot of different storms, mm-hmm, from blizzards to hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, as you had mentioned. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us, what was the most difficult storm that you try to forecast and be involved with? And what are the best things about doing your job here now in Boston, in New England?
How much time you got?
Well, we'll edit it down. So
Yeah, well, you
so
know,
you go.
I'll try and be as succinct as possible. Some of the toughest storms I've forecasted or tried to forecast, as the case may be, winter storms. Winter storms. So imagine you have a storm that's going to produce, let's say, an inch of rain. If we get 9/10 of an inch of rain or an inch and a quarter of rain,
Nobody knows.
nobody notices, right? You know, and
Yeah.
maybe there's a little bit more in the rain gauge, or maybe, if you have a very sensitive basement, that might be the tipping point, right? But now make that snow. 1 inch of rain is roughly equal, on average, to 10 inches of snow. So suddenly, now I'm forecasting an inch of rain, so I'm going to go 10 inches of snow. Again, broad brush here. We get 1.25. That's now 12 and a half inches of snow. That's just one piece to this. So I mentioned it's a 1 to 10 ratio, right? Well, if it's really cold, sometimes it could be 1 to 15 ratio, 1 to 20 ratio, right? And so now you take that inch of rain to 20 inches of snow, you get 1.25 inches of rain instead of 1 inch. You can see that we're going to magnify
It's
the error
exponential.
here.
Yeah.
Go back a couple of weeks to that storm at the beginning of March, and we had been forecasting about, I think, 7 to 10 or 8 to 10 inches of snow, and there were a lot of places that picked up 14, 15, 16 inches of snow. It was a little colder than what we thought, and there was a little more, we call it QPF, there was more rain, more moisture that fell out of the sky than what we thought. Not a real huge difference on either respect, but both made for a lot more snow in many places than what we had forecasted. And that's just, that happens all the time in
That's
winter.
a thin margin that you
It's a
have.
very
That's a
thin
thin margin of error.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
Wow.
So the winter storms
People
are the
don't
tough ones.
appreciate that.
No, and hopefully now they will a
Now
little
they
bit
will.
more.
Uxbridge, the people of Uxbridge.
Yeah,
will.
exactly.
We were actually one of the towns that got 15, 16, almost 17
Yes.
inches.
Right.
We were one of the towns that was hit hardest.
Yep.
Right.
So those are some of the most difficult ones. Some of my favorite ones, I'm going to go back to 2003. I was forecasting. I was a freelancer at another station in Boston, and I was out covering the storm in jeans and a non-waterproof coat.
That's a good call.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't have the right kind of equipment. I was actually working in the private industry before I started working in TV. So I didn't have the right kind of gear, but they called me and they said, we want you out in Situate for this storm. So here I am standing in the driving rain. Waves are crashing against the seawall coming up over the tops of like 3-story homes. And there's me in my jeans and my non-waterproof coat. And we did the evening news, and then we did the 11 o'clock news, and we had a 10 o'clock news too. And the sounds of the wind going through in between the homes and through the wires is something I'll never forget.
Wow.
That's always ingrained in my head. I remember standing out there with my photographer. We were getting ready to shoot some video, and I saw the water level on the street come up about 2 inches,
Really?
like that. And I grabbed him by his jacket, and I said, we got to get out of here. And we left, and that road ended up getting flooded out. But I think the thing that I remember it for the most was about 2 or 3 days later when I was on my couch with a horrible flu now. I don't know if I had bronchitis or whatever from being out and just getting soaked. And getting a phone call from the news director at the station and saying, geez, I can't fill in next weekend. I can't. I'm down for the count. She says, oh, I'm not calling to ask you if you'd fill in. I'm offering you the weekend job.
That's great.
And I remember with 102-degree fever and body aches and chills, jumping up and down in my apartment. I had made it. I had achieved my lifelong dream to be on TV doing the weather. And here I was about to live that dream in my, I guess, that would be my late 20s.
Wow.
And I've been very, very grateful for for that experience. Very grateful for all the experiences I had back at 25. Grateful for the experiences I had up in Maine when I was up there for a short while, and very grateful for my experiences at Channel 5 and at Beverly High School where I taught for a short time. But all of that helped me gain a lot of perspective professionally, personally, and it's been a great ride, and I hope to continue riding this wave. It's been really good.
That's great. And all those pieces make up you where you are right now,
Yeah.
and that's a great story not only for our viewers but for you folks as well. I mean, you never know what incident or what turning point in your life will be that key point where you just move it in the direction.
I will
that
tell
ends
you
up here.
too, just to kind of add to that, there was a tough point in the middle of all that where it's contract work at TV stations, and they make decisions, and sometimes their decisions affect you in a negative way. And so I was let go. I was not renewed, I should say. My contract was not renewed back at the first station I worked at, and I had a young daughter who wasn't even 1 year old at the time, and it hurt. It hurt my ego. It hurt me, personally, professionally, and it made for a tough load for my wife and my daughter to help me carry, and it lasted a long time, and it was really difficult. But when I was hired in Portland, and then when I was hired at Beverly High School for a little while to maybe get out of the profession and do something different that I had always wanted to do too. I've always wanted to teach, and I had that chance. And then Channel 5's opportunity came along. I'm actually grateful for that 1 3/4 years that I was underemployed, because again, it gave me perspective. It was hard. I couldn't wait for it to be over, but I can look back on it now and say, it was at that time that I decided I need to do something, and got my teaching certificates and took the tests, and proved to myself that I still can do other things.
Sure.
And so I'm not encouraging everybody to go through a point of unemployment, because it stinks, but
Everybody
it helped.
hits hard times.
Yeah.
And it's how you react to those hard times.
Exactly.
And,
Yep.
and
You're going to get challenged. You're going to get challenged, and it's going to be hard, and you might not think you're going to make it, but you got to keep going, knowing that there is going to be that light at the end of the tunnel, to get, all cliche.
Sure.
And it ain't going to be a train. It's going to be the other end of the tunnel. You're going to get out. You get the help of your friends, your family, former colleagues. It's amazing how many people reached out to me. What can I do? How can I help? And just knowing that I was on the phone with them or getting an email from them, they've already helped. I know that they're in my corner.
Right.
And so that just gave me a big appreciation moving forward for all the opportunities I've had since then. So I'm grateful for it.
And good for you for allowing the help to accept the help. Not everybody can.
Yeah.
I thank you so much for being with us here today, AJ.
It's been real fun.
A true treat. Greatly appreciate
Thank
it.
you very much for having me.
Brandon, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Zach, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for
I
having
wish you
me.
well in the rest of your studies. Have a great semester.
Thank you very much.
And folks, that's all the time we have here today on a special edition of Behind the Black and Orange. Thank you so much for watching. We're grateful to our UCTV friends, and always Mr. Barros, our teacher here at UHS. Have a great day.